And we're live, very good morning, Monday morning to you even. Welcome along to Off the Ball AM. What a big week we have. The Six Nations roars back into life this weekend, and it's Ireland against Wales. I'm going to do you all a favour and remind you that the spread is still 10 points. The line is 10.5 depending on where you gamble, and we were just chatting about it there. It's ridiculous. Why are we so confident of a 10-point win against Wales?
We're not confident of it. The bookmakers are confident of a 10-point win.
Money is confident of it. That's where they get that from.
Yeah, the spread was wrong, or it was an under as well when it came to England covering the spread against Wales, which was 12 points.
Yeah, back that.
Did you? Yeah, thanks for telling us all about that.
I did.
Thankfully, I managed to look up Paddy Power myself and managed to get on a bit of that. But yeah, 10 points is a ridiculous spread. It's not going to be that. Ireland will win, but they will win by 4 or 5 points. I
like your confidence this early in the week. We've got a very busy show for you today. Tommy Walsh is going to join us a little bit later on Skype. Shane Stapleton is going to join us in studio to talk about the weekend's hurling and the season so far. A little bit of reports of the demise of Kilkenny hurling, greatly exaggerated.
Yeah, 100%. Also, the reports of the demise of Waterford, is that going to be greatly exaggerated when we're talking in a few weeks' time? I think so. Obviously, a terrible result for them yesterday, a terrible start to the league campaign, but it really doesn't matter, given the fact that they'll probably get a relegation playoff to survive in Division 1A, and this whole thing just doesn't matter whatsoever to them.
Division 1A, Division 1B, not as big a deal as it was
when
teams from Division 1B keep either winning the league or the All-Ireland. It's like, yeah. The Dubs, we're going to talk about them as well. Obviously, not a great start to life under Pat Gilroy so far, but he seemed pretty calm in the comments that were in the Herald yesterday about what they're trying to do. So
exactly, like also being in 1B is a free pass. That's what it is. You're not going to get relegated from 1B if you're one of those top 8 counties. You're safe, so you can experiment all you want.
You're actually more than likely, even if you play crap, going to make quarterfinals.
Yes, there's a very good chance that happens. I see Limerick have an incredible stat yesterday. They've been in 1B for 8 consecutive years. I'm not sure, maybe Kerry, Dublin, Mayo have been in Division 1 for that level of consistency, but outside of those three, maybe, and Kilkenny, I presume, haven't got relegated from 1A. Limerick are right up there in terms of this bizarre level of consistency without being in the top tier. Like, how do you manage to stay in the second division for 8 consecutive years in Gaelic games? It's incredible. So,
but only one team gets promoted, right?
Well, that's true. It is hard to be fluid in that way.
The second best team, no matter who's been in the division for a good 8 years.
Exactly. Yeah. But there's always one top level team. Surely Galway get promoted this year. Next month or in a couple of weeks when Galway and Limerick clash.
I think Limerick have a very good chance of winning that.
They do. It's a de facto promotion playoff, despite the fact that it's not a promotion playoff whatsoever. That's what it turns into, and it happened last year when Wexford beat Galway in the regular season, so to speak. That was a de facto promotion playoff, despite the fact that you go into a pro season afterwards.
I think Wexford beat Limerick in the first game of the season last year in the league to end Limerick's interest in the competition.
Yeah. That's pretty much what happens. If you lose once to any of those teams in the top 3 in that division, it's all over.
We'll tell you what else is coming up here as well. John Divilly is going to join us a little bit later on to talk to us about another medal for Conor Callaghan. Just trying to work out, has Conor Callaghan ever actually lost a final? I don't know if anybody out there has any details on that. Maybe you get in touch with us. You can tweet us at Off the Ball AM. Shane Stapleton might know when he comes in. Of course, he's a clubmate of his in Dublin. Now, obviously, Shane's a tip man, but like, club is club, and you can't ever leave your club unless, you've got a chance of winning an All-Ireland. We'll also talk about the Eubank fight on Saturday night.
Yeah, just on the Shane Stapleton, Conor Callaghan thing, I wonder, is Conor Callaghan kind of like a LeBron figure where he's like, I want to grab all the best players and bring them here to Coola?
Oh, yeah.
I wonder, did he like see Shane Stapleton playing his trade down at Junior B and tip and was like, go get me that guy, Matty Kenny, go get me Shane Stapleton. And sure enough, it's an All-Ireland title and they're on course for back-to-back All-Irelands.
Wouldn't it be Senior B or is it actually Junior B?
Who knows? We can ask him that when he comes in as well. But yeah, Gareth A Davies is on as well tonight after a brutal conclusion to Groves Eubank on Saturday.
That final round.
Yeah, it was incredible. I'm not sure if I've seen, of course, you can go back through the annals of boxing and see plenty of occasions where the referee is soaked in blood, but I've never quite seen a blood drop on the camera lens.
No, in the way that it happens as well, you can kind of see the spurt arrive.
Oh my God, it was incredible.
Yeah.
And to dislocate his shoulder twice in the final round, George Groves, incredible stuff. But even more incredible than that was just the coverage around Eubank Jr. afterwards.
I didn't even notice the shoulder, but like certainly a bunch of people on Twitter did notice, and they were calling out the commentators for not noticing. Like, I was watching on the phone in bed, I'm not going to lie. It's like, oh, So I at least had an excuse, but...
yeah, to be fair, I did see it on Twitter before they actually copped onto it on the commentary, that it was like... I think it was after the fight ended. They were like, wait a minute, it has gloves on his shoulder.
Yeah.
So I don't think they spotted it at all, despite the fact that it happened, whatever, a minute into the final round.
What was the coverage after you were talking about?
Prince Nassim absolutely killing Chris Eubank Jr., saying that he should retire from boxing with immediate effect.
Oh, yeah?
And another fella who ripped into Eubank Jr., and this is probably less surprising, is one Chris Eubank Sr. Like, imagine being that guy's son.
What happened? What did he say?
Senior just comes on and is like, there's clearly no question about his boxing talent, which is basically, in my opinion, Eubank Senior coming on and saying, well, he's got the gift of great genes there, so he's clearly a talented boxer, but he got his tactics all wrong. He's got no coach, Eubank Jr. He coaches himself, essentially. He fights by instinct, which is a load of crap, like fighting by instinct in the year 2018.
Who is his actual coach? Does he not have a coach?
I'm actually not quite sure who is his...
Gareth A Davies will tell us.
He'll tell us, but I read a line this morning in the Times saying that he coaches himself and he fights by instinct.
Well, maybe he could have fought with the jab instead of instinct for most of the fight, and that would have... The wild haymakers that he was trying to land made for an entertaining fight. And I actually really enjoyed watching the second half of the fight. I missed the first half when they were... And the commentators I was watching it on were absolutely killing him for being so slow out of the blocks.
Is there a thing about being Eubank's son that just makes it open season whenever you lose? So I don't think I've seen a boxer just get completely ripped to shreds in the post-fight analysis as I did on ITV Box Office on Saturday night. It was incredible.
Undoubtedly.
And there is a case to be made that Eubank Jr. just says to his father, listen, I'm going to go get a coach. You can go watch me at the front ringside seats whenever I'm fighting, but I'm just going to go in a different direction and try this out. I'm going to be 30 soon. I think he's 28 years old now. So he's only got one more chance to do this. But according to people like Prince Nassim, he's not going to get another chance. He should just pack it all in now.
Right, some other stuff to tell you about. Bubba Watson was in tears on the 18th green. That means he won. Obviously, he was full body heaving after his victory last night in the PGA Tour in Riviera. Hollywood Bubba. Owen was in Inniskeen yesterday to watch the game.
Yeah, I've never been so satisfied coming away. I don't think Kerry support have been so satisfied coming away from a defeat against Monaghan as yesterday. It was just, they showed some sort of bottle that I think they'd shown in the first two games to actually get back into a position where they might have actually won the game. Two midfielders missing, obviously, because of the absolute cock-up in fixture planning that is Gaelic games, and having the Sigerson final on the day before a National League game. Granted, it was a postponed game, so it was never supposed to be that way. But essentially, because Kerry had no midfield for the first 15 minutes, they were down 7 points at one stage, and they were never going to get it back. But to get back to a point where they were 1 point down when the game was in the melting pot is an achievement for a team of youngsters, basically.
You were drinking McArdle's?
There was a McArdle's mirror on a pub, McNeillo's, in the middle of Inniskeen, with the most blazing fire you could ever imagine.
Inniskeen is some spot. Spent a fortune on Sinn Féin raffle tickets.
Yeah, there was a guy going around with Sinn Féin raffle tickets, and I was like, have to have a bit of this. I'm not sure.
When in row, I think is the phrase.
Yes, exactly. We also got a picture beside the bicycles that are up there.
Not beside the bicycles, no, you were riding Patrick Kavanagh's bicycles.
I'm not sure is that acceptable. I'm not sure.
Like the culty tourist that you were.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
are we allowed to besmirch Patrick Kavanagh's bikes? Yeah, hop up there.
Well, I mean, it's immersing yourself in culture. I think that's what it's called. Well, I don't know. But yeah, a good trip to Inniskeen. Who knows when we'll be back there again. So we said we'd have to make the most of it.
2 years' time, hopefully. Right, let's bring you the newspaper headlines from this morning. I'm going to start this morning, I think, with the GAA stories. Yeah,
on the back of the Irish Independent, it's going with hurling. Cody's Cats show punch. Waterford boss McGrath admits they haven't worked hard enough either. Reads the back of the headline on the Irish Independent. On the back of the Irish Daily Mail, it says, as you were, young Cats earn seal of approval from Cody. While on the front of the Irish Examiner sports section this morning, Dancing with the Stars reads the headline, Battling Banner claim first home league win over Cork in 13 years. While on the front of the Irish Times this morning, they're going with football. It's a picture of Paul Murphy there leaping high to catch a ball. Monaghan's victory roar contains as much relief as jubilation. And I think we're going to bring you the front page of the Irish News sports section. McIlraine urges patience. We're building, says Oakleaf manager, after win over Offaly. You've also got that picture of relief in Inniskeen yesterday as Monaghan got a vital win over Kerry.
So the back page of the Herald, this is about Wigan against Manchester City. Paul Cook, obviously the former Sligo Rovers manager. Cook, heat is on City, which in fairness, there's not really that much pressure on Wigan ahead of this game tonight in the FA Cup. And then Gilroy, no easy way out for the Dubs. He's saying that it won't be an overnight Turnaround in Dublin hurling fortunes. Bank on Sterling to show his worth is the tip on the back page of the Racing Post. The front story is Feely booked for Arduke in Gold Cup. So Noel Feely yesterday expressed his delight after being booked to ride the back to form Arduke in the Cheltenham Gold Cup. Anger over Spurs Cup semi. Rivals upset that Spurs will have home advantage if they reach the last four. Only waking up to the fact that Spurs are playing their home games this season in Wembley, and the FA Cup semi-final is in Wembley, and that means Spurs will technically be at home for the FA Cup semi-final, which is in Wembley.
Move it to the Olympic Stadium, I say.
Welcome to last season's news. Who cares?
Yeah, no, it's not going to make any difference, especially
the same number of tickets that you would have got for a semi-final as opposed to if there was a home game.
But also because it's a leasing agreement they have with Wembley, as far as I'm aware, it's not actually going to be Spurs in control of the tickets. It is literally going to be the FA, so it's not going to make a difference whatsoever.
Ref wrong to give us penalty. It's unusual that Owen wouldn't have brought this up, trying to stoke that sense of injustice that the Kerry fans obviously have. Malachy O'Rourke has claimed that the goal that claimed a surprise National Football League win for his Monaghan team over Kerry should not have stood.
Wow, okay, I missed those comments, because the goalkeeper Shane Murphy does get the ball, and when it happened at that moment I was like, that's not a penalty. But when I watched it back last night, I think he kind of gets the ball and takes the man with him. So there is an argument to be made that it is a penalty, I think. So I'm not quite sure if I actually agree with Malachy O'Rourke there in a bizarre turn of circumstances here. I think it was a penalty just about, though.
Eddie O'Sullivan also reckons Dan Levy's going to start in the back row for Ireland against Wales. I don't see there being many changes. I think James Ryan comes in for Toner. You think maybe
Stander comes back.
Cian Healy starts, and Stander, from the obvious first choice team.
Sure,
really.
yeah.
Milan worry over Groundhog Daysha, because, Groundhog Day. But, Waterford clearly have not done their pre-season training yet, or else they're in a batch of pre-season training at the moment, and they're preparing for the League of Munster.
That's the thing.
Championship, as opposed to the League of League.
I wonder will Waterford be sitting back laughing at the rest of us come that league in Munster, that they're the only ones who said to themselves, this National League does not matter a jot.
This year of all years, definitely.
Exactly,
doesn't.
and as we've already mentioned at the top of the show, being in 1B doesn't matter a jot either. If they get relegated, who cares?
Yeah, and there's just this assumption that it's the end of the current management team's era this year, that Derek McGrath will step aside this year in Waterford. So it's here are my eggs, there's the basket, and This is what we're going to do. Dele flop, Rochdale denied by Ali Dive. So Dele Ali dived again and got roundly hammered for it. Taylor gets IBF chance. This is the story that Katie Taylor's going to fight another world title fight in New York in April. Steve Davis drives Spurs potty. That's Rochdale with a late minute equaliser. And Harry Hu, Dale Hero Davis, their big gun came on to score, so I had to follow suit. And he's a big unit, the guy from Rochdale who scored the equaliser.
Yeah, he's on the back of some of the UK titles as well this morning. Spot the Cup heroes, reads the back of the Guardian. Super sub Davis stuns Spurs and sends Rochdale to Wembley. We've also got the Lizzie Yarnell story, which is doing the rounds after the weekend. After winning Skeleton Gold, I watched Netflix and chilled with some knitting, she says. She's also there at the top of the Daily Telegraph sports section. But of course, they're going with that Rochdale last-minute heroes saver spot of glory. Rochdale 2, Tottenham 2 in the FA Cup. Equaliser 43 seconds from time gives League One strugglers Wembley trip.
Yeah, so there's confirmation. Victoria's secret no longer. So it's Victoria Bustos is the IBF world champion. She's going to fight Katie Taylor in unification. So the WBA and IBF titles will be on the line on the undercard of the Danny Jacobs fight in the Barclays Centre in New York on the 28th of April. So that's a huge fight for Katie Taylor, and becoming a unified champion, well, that would suddenly start to catapult you up the celebrity ranking / earning potential.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's clearly a win-win for both fighters in this occasion, because as far as I'm aware, Bustos is one of a number of South American fighters who just don't fight outside of their own jurisdiction. They just stay down in Argentina and they box away there, and they seem to have an IBF monopoly down there, whereas now she's coming up to New York, so she clearly rates how big a prospect this is for her as well, and the potential this has for both fighters is huge. That'll be a massive win for Katie Taylor, because obviously there was a lot of criticism after the last fight and how quickly she managed to get to the top of that particular tree, but this one, I don't think there's any dubious honour about this achievement were she to win this fight.
No, totally. And just to go back to Enniskeane, David Clifford played. He had 8 or 9 on his back.
Yeah.
What was his performance like, and is that one of the reasons why you were relatively happy coming out?
Yeah, he's very good. Kerry's best goal chance came from an unbelievable kick pass from him into, I think it was Paul Ganey. But like obviously the goal didn't end up being scored. If it had gone in, that would have been the game 1 for Kerry, and it was just almost Gooch-like when Gooch was at 11, the pass inside to the inside forward, which is brilliant. But Rory Beggan pulled out a brilliant save. Beggan, by the way, are we 100% sure that Rory Beggan isn't the best goalkeeper in the country? I know that's a slightly controversial thing to say, but because he plays for Monaghan, who often crumble in Croke Park, he perhaps doesn't get the credit he deserves. He was outstanding yesterday. He was in the sweeper keeper role that we've seen more and more of. I know there was a sweeper keeper deployed in the Sigerson as well on Saturday. We saw it a lot in the international rules from the Aussie team in November, or in the international rules. And Beggan did it masterfully yesterday, just bringing the ball out of defence, playing a couple of 1-2s with the backs, coming out to his own 45, and then his distribution is excellent. So he was brilliant. Some of his kickouts, he just kicked them over the midfield and they just skimmed nicely off the wet surface and into a corner forward's arms. He was outstanding yesterday, and he actually saved Monaghan the game with that save, which was from a chance that Clifford created. Yeah,
pretty happy faces all around from the Monaghan fans. Right, let's go back to the boxing before we start our hurling coverage. Tommy Walsh is standing by. Shane Stapleton's outside. We're going to get to him in to studio right now. But first, while you're watching, here is Prince Nassim absolutely tearing Chris Eubank Jr. a new one.
Which camera can I look into to tell Chris Eubanks Jr. to finish? Because I prefer him to finish. I don't want to see him get hurt anymore.
Naz, we'll come back to...
All right, I can't afford to see him get hurt anymore.
As if he's kind of like trying to protect him. I don't know, is there beef between Nassim and the Eubanks?
There shouldn't be.
I don't think so, not that I've heard of. So it's very strange.
I'm sure that something has happened between, like, everybody was built reputation on being kind of outspoken.
Yeah, like maybe Eubank's not world title potential, but he held his own for 12 rounds, it seemed. I know McGuigan came out after the fight and was like, that was pretty comprehensive in our favour throughout. It'd be ridiculous. And I think he actually had a go at the last judge who scored a 1-point victory for Groves. A 1-point victory, I actually wasn't deviating too far from that, of course. Barry McGuigan has a bit of a deeper knowledge of boxing than I do.
Also completely biased because his son is training him.
There is that as well. So I didn't think it was as comprehensive a victory for George Groves as some people out there thought. And that just because Chris Eubank isn't going to be as good as his father doesn't mean he has to hang up the gloves and quit now. No. I think he's been beaten by the stick, and he's unfortunately found himself in these circumstances where he is Chris Eubank Senior's son.
Right, let's move on to the hurling then. So here's the post-match reaction from the Gaelic grounds where Limerick beat Dublin by 12 points.
Dublin manager Pat Gilroy, a heavy defeat here in Limerick tonight. What do you put it down to?
It's quite simple. In the second half of the first half, we dropped off our intensity, and they really hurt us. And we know when we do that, we're very vulnerable as a team. And the one positive that we could take out of it was we could have completely given up in the second half, but we lost it by 2 points. It was good that we didn't fold the tent and gave it a shot in the second half.
You mentioned a drop off there in the kind of second half of the first half, if you know what I mean. Where do you think that comes from? How does that happen?
Well, these guys are training really hard at the moment. We're working them very hard. But I think we've a mindset that we have to get into the habit of working hard for the full 70 minutes. That, it's not something that you just do for the first 15 and then you can drop it and get a recovery.
John Kiley, Limerick manager, you must be very happy with that display tonight.
Listen, we got the result and we got a reasonable performance in. We worked very hard and we dominated position, I suppose, for most part. But listen, it's another result.
Obviously, you're looking for wins. All managers are, all teams are. But what else are you looking for from these games at this time of year? And did you get it tonight?
I suppose you're looking at the attitude of the players, really. That's the first and foremost. And then what you're doing in training is coming out on the pitch. And our attitude of our players has been superb from the start of the year, and I think it's been reflected in the performances. I think in terms of what we're trying to work on in training, we're beginning to get to see that happening on the pitch. We're getting fellas in position and plenty of movement up front. So it's pleasing enough performance from our perspective.
Put up a big score as well. I imagine that's always good for a team.
It is, yeah. We'd like another couple of goals, but sure, listen, they're hard got, and that's the bottom line. So we'll keep working on that one.
Fair play to John Kiley there at the end, getting greedy for the goals. Shane, good morning to you.
Morning.
That was pretty one-sided, and not that the Dubs are getting worried, but they'd like to see that improvement coming just a little bit quicker.
They would, yeah, especially when you consider that, there was a bit of a
you know, last year under Ger Cunningham, it was panic stations pretty quickly in his third year. But at least he'd, you know, overseen a heavy win over Cork, whereas now it's in Division 1B. They've dropped down a tier and it's looking very, very shaky. Now, there obviously are mitigating factors. The cooler players aren't there. Liam Rush, for example, isn't there. So you can give them a little, you know, there are excuses for them. But at what point do you start thinking, Gilroy, he's coming in with a lot of credit for what he did in football, at what stage are questions going to be asked? But it is very early to judge.
Yeah, the comments from him in the post-match were basically along the lines, look, we're trying to instigate a defensive system and build from that, and we were grand when we were paying attention to what that was, but we kind of, for whatever reason, decided that we were going to leave some of the Limerick lads free to shoot from distance, and they were just pinging the ball over the bar. Like, can't be doing that.
Yeah, well, I suppose straight away, people are going to start saying it's all right to do that in football, but maybe not in hurling. And like that's a bit harsh from me. You know, it might even sound a little bit cheap. But in fairness, the tactics in hurling are quite different to football. A lot of the principles are the same. You know, you defend the scoring area and what have you. But like the big problem is that they're conceding so much already. You know, it's been heavy scores. They've one win against Antrim, and that was narrow.
Yeah, a single point.
Yeah, so I'd be pretty worried because they look a little bit, now this might sound a little harsh, but because they're down so many players, and they've got some good players coming through, and some guys who'd fit in quite well if the team was already strong. But because you've got so many young guys, and so many guys that didn't really have many competitive appearances for Dublin before, they're looking a little bit like a club team at inter-county level at the moment. And a lot of those, like Chris Crummy, for example, he's playing centre-back at the moment. He's actually a superstar at inter-county level. But it's very difficult for him to show that when he's trying to bail out so many players around him.
Did he tear up the Ger Cunningham book, essentially? Did he look at what happened last year and says, that was a disaster, I need to tear everything to pieces and start again? And was that the right thing to do? Because surely Ger Cunningham put some good things in action. Like, look at the players he gave debuts. You look at Donald Burke, for example, who's, I think, been Dublin's best player so far in the league, and Ger Cunningham gave him his debut.
Yeah, and same with the likes of Owen O'Donnell as well. So they're like, would they have got their debut anyway? Probably. Or do you credit Ger Cunningham for giving them their debut? You know, it's a hard one to say, but
yeah, it sounds too like they're putting a physical training plan in place to completely revamp what their approach to it. And look, maybe they were already one of the fittest teams in the country. I don't know about that, but like the new system or the new management team have come in and decided that's what their game is going to be based on.
Well, you see, there were a lot of players who were brought on board that hadn't been on inter-county panels and were, you know, well into their 20s. A few players in particular. So, I mean, they wouldn't have been the fittest players in the country. They would have been good club players. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, but.
So they've got to make that gap up, and that's why this league campaign might be.
Yeah, and like they were doing 2 days a couple of times a week. They were doing two days throughout, you know, the winter months. And I don't know if you've ever tried it 2 a day.
No,
I did it once, and I ended up
tried it once actually.
Yeah, I ended up with a cold sore, being run down. Hips were killing me, knees were killing me. Like it's
You're
very,
an old
very.
man now, though.
I am as old as the hills. Yeah, nearly as old as you.
Right.
Not quite receding as much. So.
Let's move on. Let's get to one of the big stories of the weekend. Here is the post-match from the Kilkenny-Waterford match. You're going to hear from Derek McGrath first. Here's Brian Cody speaking with Oisin.
Both of us had no points coming into it, so it gives us a start. It gives us 2 points, 2 huge matches to come up after this one, but you know, the job is done for today, done well.
And guys look comfortable out there when they went into tackles. Guys look comfortable when they were under pressure. That must have been particularly pleasing.
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody knows we have a lot of inexperienced players out there, fellas, you know, and with very little game time at this level behind them, so they're adapting well to it. It's a learning process, but certainly today's display was very, very decent.
Does a kind of a battling display like that, even though it was an 8-point victory in the end, but for most of the game it was a battle, does that give your younger lads something that bit extra? Does it give them something more?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a battle. This inter-county hurling is a battle every day you go out, you know, and you have to try and be competitive in that battle and do your hurling as well. And, you know, I think we scored 120, which is a very good return on a day like today, because conditions, obviously, you know, I really call it pitches were heavy in that.
A win, 3 games in, a win, I suppose, gives a bit of confidence, maybe gives a bit of joy around the place. Does it make a tangible difference at a victory like this? Does it make going to training a bit easier for the players? Does it make it a kind of a happier experience, if that has any relevance?
No, I don't think so, because I mean the lads enjoy going training. The training is competitive. The training is, I mean, the attitude of the training is top class, and they really, really want to keep doing what they're doing. But obviously, it brings a lot of joy when you do win, because you know it's all right saying we gave 2 good performances, if you like. The last two games we lost both of them by 3 points, and that's bringing it to a certain level. But I mean, the object of the exercise is to try and win matches for everybody, and that's what was achieved today.
Right, Tommy Walsh is with us. Tommy, good morning to you.
Good morning, lads.
So the point there that Cody makes about training being that little bit happier after a victory, I mean, clearly that's obviously true. You guys, when you were in your pomp, didn't really need to win your league matches as much as this team actually needs to win a couple of league matches. So I expect now that we'll see the improvement in the group coming along much quicker with that little bit of extra confidence that comes from winning.
Yeah, definitely, Jared. I think basically for a young team like that coming, the pressure that was on that Kilkenny team, because they're always being, I suppose, compared to the team that won all the All-Irelands. So a win like that is a lot different than it, for a team maybe like Tipperary, who are at the top of their form at the moment. To win for Kilkenny like that will give all the young lads huge confidence. Like what are most managers looking to do in this league? Most of them are looking to find players for the championship. That seems to be the current team when you're listening to all the interviews. Kilkenny yesterday, like Mossy Keone, he's from my own club, Tullaroan. I've been seeing him doing that for the last 3 years, when maybe they haven't seen it from outside the county or even outside of Tullaroan, because I've been seeing him close up. And like, he scored 5 points yesterday, but it's his other attributes really that bring it to the team. We seen it with Clare yesterday. I'm not sure, did you see the Clare match yesterday? There's a massive difference for me with Clare this year. They have a huge balance. They always have these small, little, skillful, fast players. Now they have DC and Duggan thrown into the mix. So now when the short option isn't working, you can throw it up long and you have a chance of scoring a goal or scoring a point. And I thought with Kilkenny yesterday, like Mossy Keone brings that to the team. He's a strong runner, even though he's only 19 years of age. His father, he was a warrior himself back in the mid-90s. He won an All-Ireland there in 93 with Kilkenny. Won an All-Star maybe around 98. But he was a warrior, but he was a back. What you need, the great teams have warriors up front because they set the tone. And you have Mossy Keone, 19 years of age. Pat Ling, he was under 21 last year, I'm not sure of his exact age. Another warrior-type player. And that's what you need. Like, you go back to the footballing teams back in when Tyrone were doing well. You had Brian Dewar, you had Paul Galvin from Kerry. Well, these are the type of guys, except for they're brilliant going forward as well. So it was a big win for Kilkenny yesterday for their confidence. But just as important was they're finding players now that they will have to use come championship.
Was Mossy's dad Liam?
Liam, yes.
Yeah. Remember him. So, like, how much was that pressure real? Because it seemed like you were pretty relaxed about the fact that these players were coming through and that actually, you know, you need to give them time. And not only that, we know that the championship this year is going to be a league and the round robin. So there's lots of games for some of those young lads to get their head when the weather's a little bit better.
There is, and we still need that patience with this team because we're up against a Tipperary team in probably the best form of any of the team, along with Clare, the best form of any of the teams. So we need them to really, I suppose, just go out and our supporters need to be still patient with this Kilkenny team because it's not going to just start flowing. A big victory yesterday, but we could easily go down and get beaten now in Nolan Park against Tipperary next week. Now, you look at Waterford then, Ger, they're probably on the opposite side of that, where they need to be careful that they don't lose. Like, they've no momentum at the moment. They can't stay losing games because if they do, it draws the confidence from the players. Like you seen yesterday, the players I would pick out maybe Tyke de Burke and Jamie Barron, the same guys that are probably doing it the last few years. But they need maybe a shift in focus where the opposite of what Brian Cody was really saying. Lads are going in with a pep in their step into training Tuesday night. The Waterford players won't because they've been on the road a while and they'll need victories, I suppose, to bring life back into the panel.
I'd say, like, the thing that must please Kilkenny supporters the most is the fact that the team is continuing, even if it does lose a tight game, they're dying with their boots on. And yesterday, again, to win a game like that on a field, you wouldn't put bad cows out in that field. But they won that game just on their backs, really, just fighting hard and working hard. But I just wonder, does a game like that bear any relation to what's going to happen in the middle of the summer? Because, you know, Waterford they haven't been prioritising the league. I don't think it matters though, does it? If you're Kilkenny, for confidence, certainly.
No, exactly, that's it. Yeah. And that's the bearing that it has. It's that the team can develop and they go into training and they knock lumps out of each other and everybody goes home happy, as opposed to knocking lumps out of each other and everybody starts a fight. Yeah, of course. And they're very different to the Kilkenny team that was dominating for so long in terms of, like, they seem like really hard grafters, probably don't have the same grace and skill that you'd see lads popping points from all angles in the past. So I just wonder, as the summer goes on, is this a team that's going to grow, or is this a team that's going to, you know, when it all speeds up, are they going to be quite as good as the top challengers like Tipperary and you'd imagine Galway, and maybe Clare if they're going to make the push as well. But TJ Reid, of course, is still delivering. He's just turned 30 now, still
as I had him number 2 in the power rankings of the hurlers, and the way that he managed to isolate himself inside, it was very clever. Wally Walsh took Barry Coughlin on a little tour of the wing, and that left TJ Reid isolated inside with Tyke de Burka, snaps the ball and ends up scoring the goal. So a lot of those raw materials are still there, and of course Richie Hogan and the likes of Colin Fennelly to come back to that attack line as well. So it's not as bleak as it once looked.
No, I think it gets better throughout the year, Tommy, and I'd be eager to get your take on this, because Christy O'Connor was writing in the Sunday Times yesterday that they've obviously, we all know that they've had like 50 players in and about training under Brian Cody over the last couple of weeks, and Christy was making the point that these young fellas were kind of playing for themselves, that they were trying to make a name for themselves, and the forward unit in particular weren't cohesive at all. But yesterday it seemed that they were playing as a team for potentially the first time this year.
Yes, and I suppose the big advantage that we had when we were playing, coming onto the Kilkenny team, was they were successful. So coming in as a young player, a new player, you were being selfish really. You only had to think about yourself. You might go well, you might hit a few balls, but the team was winning anyway. So there was not really much focus on your performance. So as you look at this Kilkenny team now, they're coming in, like, I always felt sorry for, say, Joe. And Joe Canning came in at 19 or 20 years of age into the Galway setup. Straight away he was expected to win All-Irelands for Galway. And they're comparing him to Kilkenny players, which I thought was unfair, because a Kilkenny player at the time only had to come in and look after himself. He wasn't expected to win the All-Ireland or win a Leinster Championship for Kilkenny. So it was very much easier for the player himself. You go back into a team setup then. So a team coming in like this Kilkenny team, they're not expected as individuals just to perform themselves and do okay. They're expected to go out and win matches for Kilkenny. So that's why it's even tougher again for these young players. So the way they're performing, and I suppose the pressure that's probably has been put on them in the first few weeks, with I suppose the media scrutiny, that's on all players, because of the focus and the publicity that the leagues are getting at the moment, is far tougher than it was when we were playing. So you have to hand it to them regards their character and that. And and I'd be saying the same to even the Waterford guys, like the scrutiny that's on them and their systems as well can't be easy. Twitter and all the social media that's around now, they're probably seeing it every single day. So like, I'd like to see for Waterford, let them get a victory. Think they're probably, not sure who they're up against next, but if they could get a victory, it's amazing the way their season could change. And what I would even say is the most important probably match of the year for Waterford going forward would be the first round of the Munster Championship, because they have the players. As all they're lacking at the moment is just a little bit of confidence. If they get a win in their first Munster Championship game that's run on a league basis now, the momentum could just take them off for the summer. I think that's what Derek McGrath might be hoping for.
There's a little bit of a parallel with what happened with Tipperary in 2009. They got to their first All-Ireland final with that particular group, and perhaps Waterford are the same, that you think they're going to kick on the following year, and maybe they themselves think that we're going to make that next step, and all of a sudden when you think it's going to happen, you're not doing enough to make it happen. So maybe they're going to need a couple of bad results, shake themselves off and go again. But they haven't had a full team out every week. Their first game they played the full team for 70 minutes. So the league is definitely a priority, but the worry would be that a couple of years ago, getting to a league final, winning a league, those were the platforms for their season.
They're at Cork in their next game. Just looking at the fixtures there. The only one last point on this, Tommy, before we move on, is there any possibility that they just didn't physically prepare for the league the way they have done in previous years, and that they do have that first round of the Munster Championship in terms of the actual physical preparation? Because a few of them just don't look as fit as we know they will be by the time the summer rolls around.
Yeah, and sometimes, we were watching it there yesterday, and the one thing hit me was that the strength of these guys. They're obviously after doing huge gym work, I think, the last 3 years. I think a few of them came out. Was it Austin Gleeson came out after they were beaten by Kilkenny in the All-Ireland semi-final, the first one, and they just felt the sheer power of the Kilkenny team. It was a lesson for themselves going forward, and they've really looked like guys that have spent the last probably 2-3 years in the gym. Like Jamie Barron looked huge, and he'd be a small type of a frame player. And Noel Connors, he was always well set, but he's even looking stronger again. Tom Devine looks absolutely massive. I think he won. We were following him in Irish his family's there a few years ago. But he's gone bigger again, Tom Devine. There's a few more players. They're just gone really, really strong. So I think you could be right, Ger. Derek McGrath set out his thought at the very start. It wasn't about the league. So I think they have their gym work done, possibly not their leg work in regards when you're out, I suppose, in the field just running, and maybe when you're, I suppose, the hardest thing about hurling is not even the running, it's when you're coming up against guys in shoulder clashes and in the rucks. That's when you really, really feel it. So maybe they haven't that work done, and we will see maybe Derek McGrath is planning for the Munster Championship, and that's when we'll see the best of him. But they need to be careful, they need to get a win. Even going well in training might be the difference, just to get him into a bit of form.
The question of the sweeper is going to come up again straight away. I think John Milan was questioning whether they should continue with it. Their forward scored just 1-3 from play, and I think they'd only a point scored from play for a long time. So I wonder, like Tommy, what you think, the wider question of, do they need to play the sweeper? And my opinion on it would be that the reason they play a sweeper is not because they don't trust their backs, but because they don't trust their forwards. Like if you consider Austin Gleeson wears number 6 on his back because he's probably naturally a centre back, and he's obviously an excellent forward, but you know, would you have him centre back first and foremost if you could afford it? And you think that Brick is a back as well, and he's in the forwards. So they've converted backs into forwards to win ball, and then there are a couple of other good lads around them. But they're lacking a number up front as well, which kind of makes it more difficult to get scores on the board. So I wonder, does Tommy think that they can maintain having a sweeper, or do they need to go with 6 up front?
Yeah, well, Shane, it's a great point from a forward side of things, because I suppose I spent most of my career in the backs, but I have spent a fair chunk of time up in the forwards as well with the club. And I find the most difficult, like you'd be talking about ball winning ability. When you're 1 versus 1, it's much easier because the 2E go up for it. Most of the time it will hit the ground anyway, and the 2E can fight for it. Or at least it's going to be 50-50 anyway, because maybe your centre back and their centre forward will be fighting for it. But you transform that back up into the forward division. We'll take, we'll say DJ Foran or Patrick Curran, for example. They go up for the ball in a Waterford forward line. If that hits the deck, there's a sweeper from the other team there, because they go with their sweeper themselves. So it's so difficult for a forward, even for confidence, because like the likes of DJ Foran maybe and Maurice Shanahan, Brick Welch, it would suit them that little bit more because they're big, strong guys and they'll win the ball. But most guys like Patrick Curran and Dunford and these lads, like they're waiting on fast ball to break, and then they're darting onto it, and it's one-on-one situations. So I think they'll probably have to make up their mind very quickly. They'll have to go with one or the other and just stick with it. But it hasn't worked for them. Like you take the Great Clare team that won the All-Ireland in 2013, like they would have played similar type of defensive tactics. And I just felt, let's say that they had to be in contesting All-Ireland finals or contesting All-Ireland semi-finals, and you'd say, listen, it's just not working for them on the final day, or maybe they're losing a bit of luck. But they're not even getting to the semi-finals or finals. They haven't won a Munster Championship. This Clare team that won 4 under-21s in a row. So how successful is it? That's what I'd love to know, because teams like that should be contesting All-Ireland finals, All-Ireland semi-finals every year. And for Waterford, they have been contesting semi-finals, but have not gone, I suppose, the whole way which they need to do. So I think I'd love to see him trying it out maybe for the last few league games. And if it's not working, then Munster Championship, go back to your sweeper type system.
All right, just want to move on to the Tip Wexford game from Saturday night, where our man Shane Stapleton was man of the match. Oh yeah, there he is, accepting the man of the match award on behalf of Air Sport. Good man, Shane. What's the sport to deserve this?
As soon as I saw the producer Tommy favourite this the other night, I knew this was coming up.
Yeah, good of Jason Ford to come out of the dressing room to give you the trophy.
Yeah, I know he's a fierce, nice chap. So yeah. I mean, he didn't mind at all.
Where was the intermediary? You're supposed to have somebody there like a...
I was wondering that as well. You kind of handled the Man of the Match trophy by the tip of the award while handing it over to him. It was almost as if you...
Yeah, okay, it looked a bit silly when I was handing him the award. So what happened is I have a bit of a cut on my hand, right? So I didn't want to use that hand, yet I was trying to hold the match programme where I had a couple of questions and the microphone and do the whole lot. And the thing is, I didn't even injure my finger hurling or anything. I was chopping peppers.
Hey.
So it's really stupid.
Yeah. Maybe, Shane, it's the modern techniques, your visualisation technique, where you're thinking of the club All-Ireland for Kool-Aid, come on with 20 minutes to go and score 1-5. There you are, picking up your man in the match of Ireland ballpark. We know what you're doing.
I have the game hurled in my head already.
Typically pretty happy with the quality of their performance, because a lot of expectation around this Wexford team and the way they've started the season so far, Tommy, but for Tip to be grinding out these matches now, it feels important to them.
It does, and they're doing so as well by changing up the team. I think Michael Ryan this year is just saying, listen guys, I'm tearing up the team sheet here. Best guys at the time will get their positions. And you can see that when Michael Breen playing corner forward. Like, he's not a natural corner forward. You have the Bonner out in the wing, Sean Curran on the other wing. Like, these guys I think are there to shake things up, because the Noah McGrath, the John McGrath, Shamie Cannon, Bubbles, them guys will put the ball over 9 times out of 10 when they're there on their own. But you need a balance in a forward line, because you don't need 6 grafters, but also you don't need 6 guys that are magicians. So to get that balance right is vital, because they'll break a ball when another guy won't. They'll maybe pull on the ball into the full forward line when another guy would have rose the ball. So it's vital when you have brilliant forwards like Tipperary have, to have that balance. And I thought Wexford guys came out 2 or 3 times. Michael Breen was running into him. Bonner was running into him. And then they put up a scoreline like that. So for Michael Ryan, I think the most pleasing aspect is he has shaken up the team and they're still in great form.
Tommy, was Saturday night an exhibition of how to beat the sweeper or how not to play the sweeper? Because obviously Sean Murphy got taken off. He was pretty ineffectual for large parts of the game. But then they stick Kevin Foley into that sweeper role, and he was on the ball a bit more and did a lot better in that role. So is there sort of a hybrid role that Wexford could look at, where you're playing the sweeper role but you're on a lot more ball, basically?
Yeah, well, I think for Davy Fitz it'll be a pleasing aspect for him in the fact that Sean Murphy he wasn't at his best the other night, and were able to put in a guy and went on and had a terrific game. It was nearly the changing of the match, I felt, for Wexford, is when they put Kevin Foley back. He started dominating proceedings then. So for Davy, that will be very pleasing that he doesn't just have to rely on Sean Murphy, because I kind of rate Sean Murphy himself and Tyke de Burke as the original sweepers, the guys that really, I suppose, perform that position best. And to be able to do that without Sean Murphy will be definitely very pleasing for Davy. But how to beat the sweeper system, I don't think you can really draw any from the Tipperary match, because they've beaten the sweeper system since it started. Like, you take Waterford a few years ago in the Munster final, they were just way too good for it. And see, they've guys in the corners that can win their own ball, and they're brilliant as regards. They're not just grafters. They can blitz you with skill. So they have the bottom. They're big, strong guys. So I don't think you can really draw any conclusions from the Tipperary way of playing the sweeper system, because to beat the sweeper system, really, you have to be able to win your own ball. And then you have to keep it away from the sweeper. It's not simple. And Tipperary did both brilliantly, but have been doing it since dot one.
What about free taking? Lee Chin missed 5 frees, and ultimately they lose by 6 points. But if Wexford have a free taker who is hitting 90%, then they're getting to a level where they're going to be unbelievably competitive this year. Yeah,
it's a recurring issue for them as well. Paul Morris had missed one beforehand. Mark Fanning had hit a long range one wide. I suppose you wouldn't worry too much about that. Conor MacDonald has been on the frees in the past as well. So it's definitely a recurring theme for them. They missed 5 goal scoring chances as well, which in a 2-goal game is fairly decisive. But at the same time, you always felt like any time Wexford were getting close, Tip were able to step it up. And I kind of thought, yeah, Tip were in third gear at times. But then a couple of the Tip officials said to me afterwards that Paddy Maher was so tired he was barely able to talk, because he had to put in a massive effort.
Yeah. Just
going back to that sweeper, I think a sweeper can always be beaten if you play heads-up hurling, because it always means that you've got an extra guy in your own defence as well. And
why don't the good teams just push up
on that sweeper?
Not have a spare man on your own defence. Actually, just have an extra forward.
So you're saying, for example, why wouldn't Tip just push up on Kevin Foley / Sean Murphy?
But not quite, so be 25 yards off him in their half or on the halfway line, as opposed to marking him.
Well, you'd wonder about getting caught up in the traffic. And also, if you put a 7th forward up there, you're going to choke up the space for your own forwards and they've nowhere to move.
So put them in midfield, on the 65.
But everyone does kind of crowd out to midfield anyway. The wing forwards are normally out in midfield, so it's not necessarily like there's 40 yards of space stand in there, because everyone kind of mills in around the middle 8. But just in terms of kind of beating the sweeper, you've got to just, when you're coming out of the backs with the ball, you've just got to make sure you look up and work it to the guy who's got 10 yards of space, so they can pop it somewhere to make the sweeper irrelevant. Because if you've ever played the sweeper position, which I'm sure you have, Ger, that if a ball is popped from one wing to the other, it doesn't matter how quick you are as a sweeper or how good a hurler you are, the ball is going to travel 3-5 times as fast as you, and you're just not going to get there, and you're going to be shuttle running over and back, and you're never going to get near it. And Tip became very good at that, especially in 2016 when they won the All-Ireland. And I think it's going to be tough for Wexford against the bigger teams in the Championship to make that work.
Is Jason Ford the real deal?
In terms of his potential, he certainly is. The way he finished that first goal, Sean Kern flicked it across. He lifted it up at full sprint and hit it at full extension. It actually looked like Roger Federer when he's hitting a ground stroke. I thought it was fantastic. The thing with him has always been whether he can get his body right, because he's never looked as lean as he has this year. And I saw him with UL a couple of times as well. He just looks really strong. He just looks in great shape. And I think if you contrasted with the photographs where Davy Fitz is shouldering him on the field last year in the league semi-final, he didn't look anywhere near as lean and strong. And I think a lot of the time his body is broken down any time he tried to kick on. But he looks to have found the right formula this time. Like, his hurling is absolutely fantastic. And if Seamus Callanan takes longer than usual to come back from the back injury that he's had, I think Ford, talent-wise, is someone that can step into the breach.
All right, one last question for you, Tommy, before we let you go this morning. Yeah. The Clare-Cork match, a weird game. Clare absolutely dominant for the first 35 minutes. Cork come back into it, and then Clare see it out. I wonder if Cork fans aren't going to be not that worried about it, actually, because they had a couple of changes before throw-in, and there was definitely 3 first-choice players not playing, and the second half performance was good enough for that team to suddenly think, actually, you know what, we have a bit of strength and depth here, and we know what we're doing.
Yeah, Ger, and it just, a lot of time a team mirrors their manager, and like for me, for too many years, the Cork team, when they're in a game like that, yesterday, I was watching the game, when they're in a game like that, they were bet by 10, 15 points, and you're saying, what? And the day before they could have won by 10 or 15 points. And you're wondering, what is the story? Like, what are they missing, this Cork team? And it was fight. The last 2 years, they haven't been doing that. They haven't been going away when the going got tough. And I think John Myler's a tough guy. Like, the miles he's clocked up, both following his son over across the waters and going down to Kerry to train. I think he was training, was a Kilmiley down in Kerry, that great club in North Kerry. They love their hurling down there as well. And he's a great guy and he's a tough guy, and I think this Cork team is mirroring him. Like, you look at their centre back yesterday, Tim O'Mahony, like, he's a real find for me. He's your old traditional style centre back. He'll stay around the centre, he'll be going right, he'll be going left, back into the full back line, just clearing balls all day and winning the high balls. And he's, for a neutral watching the game yesterday, he was a joy to watch, when things were even going bad for Cork. So, yeah, they were gone. So that's the one pleasing aspect that they would have to take from yesterday's game. But they shouldn't be getting bit. They're too good to be getting bit by 9 or 10 points, which they were at one stage yesterday. I think it was 10 points at half-time they were getting beaten by. Like, they can't be letting that happen. And for them, the likes of Harnedy up front, I would like to see him. He looked frustrated there yesterday. I'd like to see him maybe... just someone bringing them aside and say, listen, enjoy your hurling. You don't have to win this game on your own for Cork. I know you're one of the leaders. You've always produced it. You don't have to prove that to anybody. Just go out there and relax now and enjoy yourself. And I think for that Cork team, it's about finding players again. I wouldn't be too worried about. They're after picking up a win against Kilkenny. So just about finding players. And I thought Robbie O'Flynn in the forward line was brilliant as well, Ger. So there's 2 players that they have found for the summer. But going back to Clare, a serious outfit this year. They've set their stall out. They've went, ball-headed for this first 3 games. It'll be interesting to see after they've qualified now, will they start trying out players or will they try and keep momentum going? Like, I thought the wing back, Michael O'Malley, I thought he was brilliant yesterday. He got man of the match and all, but he was super and dispossessed a few times when the Cork forwards going through. So he's a real find for them. But the real thing for Clare to me is their balance. They have DC now. They have Peter Duggan up in the forward line. So they don't have to just give short little passes. They can pump it long as well.
Tommy, great stuff. We'll let you go this morning. Thanks a million for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, lads.
Tommy Walsh giving us some thoughts there. You wanted to come in on that?
Yeah, well, I thought that Clare actually, their work rate in the first half was really, really impressive because they turned over that Cork backline several times, and Cork couldn't get the ball to the inside line where Patrick Horgan and initially Shane Kingston were a 2-man inside line. So they kind of crowded out their own half-forward line a little bit, and they could never get on the ball because Clare were winning a lot of primary possession in that area, whereas Clare went with 3 up front. with Podge roaming a little bit, and I just thought they had a bit of a better balance. But Cork, to be fair, when you're down Alan Cadigan and when you're down Conor Lahan, who is arguably in the top 5 hurlers in Ireland talent-wise for sure, it's always going to be difficult.
I think it's the first time since '97 that Clare have beaten all the big 3 in the one season, which bodes well for them. I saw Eamon Sweeney mentioning in the Irish Independent this morning that in terms of natural talent that Clare have, they're below Tip and Galway, but they're ahead of the rest of the pack. Is that a fair comment?
I wouldn't say they're ahead of Cork. I wouldn't say they're ahead of Galway. Was Galway part of that, sorry?
Yeah, Galway and Tip, he reckons, have better players, but as a pure player group, I suppose the likes of Tony Kelly is what he's talking about there, but outside of him, do you see players at that level?
Yeah, outside of Tony Kelly, Colin Gavin's exceptional. Yeah. David Reedy stepping up has been another brilliant player in that sort of size profile. Yeah, I think Clare, the problem with them is they're always going to have 5 or 6 brilliant players, 5 or 6 fairly good players, and 3 or 4 okay players. And when it comes to the heel of the hunt, I just don't think that they're quite going to have that quality. And we've seen it for years. What have Clare actually done? They won an All-Ireland in an off year. I know they hate hearing it, but they stepped into the breach when Tip and Kilkenny flopped that year. They beat what was a very poor Galway team that year. I suppose they bet what was in front of them after that. But what have they done 6 or 7 years either side of that? They haven't even gotten to Croke Park any year. So that tells you that it was a fluke year. It does, though. It does, because they really have. They've
or
put
else
together.
they've chronically underperformed in the other years, and that's possible too. That now perhaps they found the right blend of how to manage that team, and also they were a team of kids. Like sometimes it takes kids time to mature.
But sure, how many years of excuses are you going to give them? They were young.
This is
but
their last
they're not
one.
young forever.
No, exactly. This is their last year, and they've started like a house on fire, right?
Well, this team's age profile is actually pretty young. When the 2013 team, I think a huge amount of that panel are gone. So this team bears very little relation to that, and they've done nothing. They've won a league title, but we all know that league is league, lads, and you need to define it no more than that. But they've done nothing to suggest that they'll win an All-Ireland.
Right.
Are you talking about them as All-Ireland contenders?
No, I don't think so. So at this point, there are 2 All-Ireland contenders, and everybody else has to prove themselves, and that's Galway and Tip. And let's see what everybody else has. Is
maybe Waterford.
Maybe, but let's just make sure that they have everybody fit and well and healthy and look like they're ready for it. And then after that, who knows? Cork could come with a run, Clare could come with a run to surprise one of those teams. But the way it's set up to give Tip and Galway the opportunity to find their game by the time they get to the knockout series, like it's actually well set for the best teams with the deepest panels.
But you know, actually, I think the whole evolution of hurling in terms of the tactics is going to jump on massively because of the round robin system, because in previous years, you might only get 2 games in your whole championship, and it might last a month because the qualifiers come so quickly. Whereas everyone has a minimum of 5 championship games now, which means that you could see the evolution of hurling jump on very quickly.
Limerick hammered Dublin with no Napiershik players. Dublin are missing the cooler players, but Limerick's arc of improvement looks way higher after Paddy's Day and bodes very well for John Kiley's options. Should be a cracker in Salt Hill. Yeah, there's another round of games before that match. Let's move on, because Dave McIntyre was at the Offaly Galway match and he caught up with Micheál Donoghue and Kevin Martin.
Kevin, we'll get to the referee in a moment, because both yourself and Micheál have had a couple of words about the referee, but your thoughts overall on how Offaly performed today?
Yeah, I thought in the first half we did well. Half time only 3 points down. They had to put in a good shift. They were under a lot of pressure at times, so our backline handled it well. On the 3 points down, turning to play with the breeze. It was a nice stiff breeze there. I thought we were in a real good place.
The second half didn't get underway as you would have liked. Obviously the red card pretty soon afterwards. I don't really know why he was sent off, why Shane was sent off. A couple of people here have had a quick look at the footage. There doesn't seem to be much in it, and that's a game changer for a team like Offaly, especially for someone of his influence.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we lost the man against Limerick, and Limerick just annihilated us in Tullamore, and the same happened today. Galway just had the spare man to play the short puckouts. They just worked the ball up, and you can't afford to go a man down against a team like that. You just get crucified. And I didn't see the incident. As I said, I followed the ball on, and we'll have to look at it during the week and see exactly what happened.
Where are you now in terms of confidence and morale? Because you took a huge amount from the game at Croke Park. You've kind of come down with a bang, haven't you, subsequent to that, with 2 pretty heavy defeats now to Limerick and Galway?
Yeah, I mean, the lads, they were low in the dressing room there, and and rightly so. They're have to put in a huge effort, and the way it worked out wasn't the way we planned, especially at half time. We thought things were going to be a lot better for the second half, but that's sport, that's hurling, but they're mentally they're strong, and I know they'll regroup on Tuesday night.
Yeah, look, in terms of ourselves, I just think it's with a better performance today than we had in the last 2 games. So we've been training hard for the last 2 weeks, you know, and training through it and right up to the game. So I was happy overall with the attitude of the players. But you know, there's a.
We don't know what he's going to say at the end there. Neil Donoghue cut short at the end talking with Dave McIntyre after another win for Galway in the league. Let's move on to the Sigerson Cup. We're going to speak with the winning Sigerson manager in just a minute. First though, let's hear from, actually let's just watch a little bit of the video. This is from Jerome Quinn in the Higher Education GAA.
Con, what's it like to win the Sigerson?
It's really sweet, really enjoyable. Only came into the team really last week. I was staying in touch, but really special feeling.
How is it different?
I suppose you're playing with lads from different counties and you're normally battling against them, you know, in really competitive matches in Croke Park or whatever. So it's very nice to be able to play with them and a bit of camaraderie between the teams or between the players from different counties. So it's very nice.
What was the intensity like out there of this particular game? I mean, it is different. It's universities.
Yeah, they put it up to us hugely, and you know the pitch held up, wasn't it? The match we played on Wednesday was a much different game, but they really put it up to us, and we expected that. We were lucky enough to get away one point winners in the end.
One step to see.
Yeah, so you're usually with the Dubs, but you see all these lads from all the different counties: Tipperary man, Monaghan men, Kerry men. I mean, it's a great mix.
Mayo men even as well. Stephen Cohen, our captain. So. No, yeah, there's a great mix, and as I said, there's a great bond between those lads. So it's really enjoyable to be a part of that.
Conor McCarthy from Monaghan with the goal. I think he scored 1-6 in the game. We've got John Divilly, the UCD manager, on the line. John, congratulations.
Thanks very much, guys.
Yeah, so it was close in the end. It sounds like it was a proper ding-dong.
It was a fantastic game of football. End-to-end stuff. Could have gone anywhere, to be honest. It looked like extra time was going to happen again from a UCD perspective, but we just held out in the end. But a really good game of football. 2 teams that went at it, lots of quality players on view, and it was a good end to the Sigerson campaign for us anyway.
There's no manager in the country who wouldn't actually like the challenge of taking on a team like UCD with the talent that they have. But with that level of talent comes expectation and comes pressure on yourself as well to deliver, because, you know, as Con said there, you can spring Con in situations like that, and we all know what a talent he is. But, you know, there must have been some pressure on you as well.
Well, not really. I mean, look, my job is to get the best out of the guys, to, you know, make sure that they have a good time playing football in college. It's a small window. They have lots of external stuff going on. Most importantly is the academic side. And, you know, it's all changed from when I was playing, where exams were at the end of the year. Now guys are on continuous assessment week in, week out. You know, lots of exams 3 or 4 times in their academic year. So football is a great release for them. And we need to make sure that the release is positive and that they're coming out and enjoying themselves. So pressure, there's pressure in any coach, because you always want the best for your team. So whatever pressure I put on myself, I have to deal with that. But players, I mean, if we didn't win on Sunday, or on Saturday, sorry, I mean, you know, so be it. You know, we didn't win last year, we won the year before. We could have won 3 in a row. We could have lost 3 in a row. Like, that's the way football goes. It's very unpredictable at times, and we're just lucky that we came out on the right side of a great game of football on Saturday. And I do feel sorry for NUIG. They played great football, and they have a great captain in Damien Comer, and he lost his grandfather at the weekend. So our deepest sympathies go out to Damien from everyone in UCD.
Absolutely. Well, just on the Sigerson 2 years ago, John, it must be very satisfying for you given the level of turnaround that happens in college, because presumably it was a very different panel 2 years ago to the one this year, and it's almost vindication for the work you're doing that you managed to pull out 2 Sigersons with 2 different teams.
Yeah, I suppose that there is a high turnover. I mean, from last year's team, even, I think we just 5 starters. Now, you know, the life cycle of most students is about 4 years. So, you know, a good few guys were knocking around the panel 2 years ago when we won. A good few of them were knocking around again last year. So it's just, you know, trying to get the balance. Guys come in and out of form. You know, some guys that played last year are still in UCD this year, but decided not to play. That, you know, they had the commitment to travelling up and down for county training. They had lots of placement issues. You know, they have to go and work for a year in their college courses. So you don't know until September what guys you're going to have available to you. And then obviously from September to December, when you're getting to know them again, things happen with injuries, with club commitments, and then some guys get called into county panels and they just decide, you know, I can't serve two masters, I suppose, and you just have to respect that and work with what you have. So, yeah, it's a different challenge every year, and it is really enjoyable then when you can bring a bunch of players together in a few short weeks and obviously try and win a competition.
One of the big talking points from the match was the fact that Kieran Malloy went up via Garda escort to Dublin after playing in Tullamore that afternoon to feature and come on after 39 minutes for NUI Galway. Now that the dust has settled a little bit, what's your reaction to that whole thing being? It's kind of indicative of a wider problem, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a huge problem, and I mean, you know, this potential problem was flagged last November. I mean, we flagged it potentially that Corofin, if they kept progressing, might be in a final, and they had the date already fixed as the Sigerson final fixed for the same day as the All-Ireland Club semi-final. So to me, I mean, you know, we hear a lot of top brass people in the GAA talk about respect for players and welfare and fixtures issues. They knew this could happen, yet they turned a blind eye to it, hoping that, you know, well, maybe no one will be involved, we might get away with it. They didn't get away with it, and it was very, very harsh. Now, I mean, fair play to Kieran Malloy for travelling up. Like, we didn't ask Liam Silk to travel up because I thought it was highly unfair to put a player in that situation. Kieran Malloy travelled up. He's a great young guy, and he played very well when he came in. I mean, what needs to happen here, in my view, I'm a good while in Sigerson football, is either the current president or the incoming president of the GAA needs to sit down, not with third-level committees, not with former players. Sit down with the 16 current managers in Sigerson, bring in the 16 current captains and say, look guys, we want this competition to survive and thrive into the future. How can we do it? You're the guys on the ground dealing with the problems day in, day out. There is no point in bringing in inter-county managers because it's not their problem. Their problem is to deal with their competitions. This is our problem. And if the GAA want to really solve it, they need to kind of sit down and just stop, you know, all this fluff talk, because all that's going to happen is if we don't sit down in the next few months, we'll be talking about this in 2019.
If that did happen, John, what would you say to them?
Well, I'd have my personal opinion, but I mean, it's not fair for me to air that here. I think we all should be brought into the room and have a deep conversation about it. You know, suss out the traditions of the competition, the values and the importance of young guys in college, because we do really forget, you know, you're talking about Con there. Con is only a 21-year-old guy, I mean, with lots of stuff going on. He needs to be able to enjoy his football, as does all the other players in the country, without worrying about implications. If you play a college game or you train with your college, it's going to affect your inter-county position. And that is the reality for a lot of colleges players around the country, that they're afraid if they miss a training or miss a game with their county, it's really going to affect them. And it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be at all. I mean, colleges football is there to add to a player's career that will help them deal with, you know, high pressurised situations, which championship ultimately is, and that's what inter-county is all about, trying to win the All-Ireland.
Can the Sigerson Cup survive on this current path that the GAA is going, John? Because it seems to me that the pressure on college players is a lot worse than it was even 5-10 years ago.
It can survive and it will survive. It's just a matter of how much the GAA wants it to be a good competition. If they want it to be a good competition, they have a great sponsor in there now in Electric Ireland. They do a lot of work on the social media side promoting it. I mean, if they want it to survive and be a top-level competition, it will survive. If they want to pay lip service to it, then it will gradually, you know, decrease like the Railway Cup has. So they have a decision to make, and I really hope the new president coming in will take it on board and listen to the people that are trying to do the work in third level.
John, great stuff. Thanks very much for joining us. Congratulations again. It's some achievement. Good man yourself. Thanks a million.
Thanks very much, guys.
Just to leave that point, the Railway Cup is a real... There was this great thing. Everybody loved it for a while. And then you sit there and you sit in your hands and, geez, we should do something about that. We should do something about the Sigerson of the Given, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
And that's what it's like, sitting on hands going,
let off.
He's right though.
Yeah, I think slowly over time people pay less and less interest in it, and it just gets sidelined because, you know, the championship and inter-county level is made front and centre, and perhaps even in a way with the club championship because of these ridiculously tight windows, and you have to play it off like a blitz in the space of a month. Everything is having to subside for the inter-county beast, and I don't think that's right at all. I mean, I think in terms of the list of priority, club should be number 1, inter-county number 2, and then the college competitions number 3, because when you come down to it, all college players are club players initially, all inter-county players are club players initially.
That suggests they all have to be, there has to be this kind of perpetual row between these things, but actually you can have windows where you go and say, for now we're going to celebrate this amazing competition that we had and we're going to give you this month. Like if you, so the college basketball, March Madness, it's all played off over a month. No one cares because it's just a month, and that's fine. Like if you were to give the Sigerson and Fitzgibbon a month, Saturdays and Sundays, and everybody paid attention to it for that month, I think it could thrive. And so long as it's not, so long as Corfin aren't without 2 of their best players, or 2 of their players are thinking, if I just save myself now for the next 10 minutes, I might get, like, do you know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
It's even sad when you look at the All-Ireland Club Final, that there's still inter-county action that weekend. They haven't even prioritised that to have a weekend of its own. And obviously I have skin in the game there, and you might, you know, point at that. But the point is that, you know, for years and years and years, it's getting a little bit sidelined by that. And like the Railway Cup, there's years where there was 40 and 50,000 at.
Oh, yeah.
How brilliant would it be to watch like Seamus Callanan with Patrick Horgan and with Austin Gleeson?
Amazing.
And this is, one weekend is built around it.
Yeah.
It'd be incredible.
I know. And
if it was done right now and everyone was pushing for it.
They have the TV coverage for it as well. Shane, good man, thanks a million, best of luck.
Thank you.
Hope the twice a day training sessions aren't killing you.
Oh, no.
Leaving you plenty fitness for the imminent All-Ireland Club Final. Anyway, we'll leave that one there. Time for us to turn our attention to the boxing at the weekend, and despite dislocating his shoulder in the final round, a big win for George Groves. Gareth A Davies is with us this morning. Good morning to you, Gareth. How are you?
Good.
A lot of criticism of Chris Eubank Jr. in the aftermath of this fight. How merited is the criticism?
You know, look, when you hype yourself up to the point where you say, you know, your father's saying you're a machine, as his father, Chris Eubank Sr. said, that he's as destructive as Mike Tyson, that he doesn't have a team around him that's conventional in boxing. He doesn't have a conventional trainer. He calls himself self-trained. He says he's impervious to pain. And then he goes out and he's schooled technically by George Groves in Manchester. There are repercussions. You know, there's a word called hubris, which we all know well. We've all been there. We've all been the arrogant young man who believes he can do, who feels indestructible. But a time comes when you have to kind of form to convention, Jay. You have to take the mores of a sport that's been around for 150 years. There are reasons that there are cornermen, trainers, camps, teams. And Chris Eubank Jr. got exposed as a man who didn't know how to change the pattern of a fight through boxing ability on Saturday night. And he got beaten up. He was very brave. He was very courageous. He's very tough physically. But he got outmanned and out-old-manned, and he got manhandled by a much better, technically skilled, bigger boxer.
This isn't the hubris of Conor McGregor training for Floyd Mayweather. This is hubris that can be fixed, though, with a coach, right? Because the boxing skills that Chris Eubank has, you know, allied to a proper game plan, could see him be a viable fighter in his weight division.
He's not a super middleweight because his power didn't carry up. George Groves was able to handle him very easily in terms of power. I mean, it was a don't get me wrong, it was a terrifically exciting fight, but it was pretty one-sided. It was terrifically exciting because Eubank Jr. is prepared to put everything on the line. He's naturally a middleweight. Look, there was a lot of money on the line in this WBSS World Boxing Super Series semi-final tournament anyway. You know, that there's £48 million worth of prize money for the 2 weight divisions involved in it. So, and it's a 16-man tournament. So equal that money out. You know, you're going to be very well paid for 3 fights in 9 months if you're in it. So he was invited into the tournament. He had the IBO title at 12 stone. So you know, and he's a name. He really brought fans to the arena. I mean, that arena sold out in 7 minutes when the fight was announced. So yes, he can progress. I think George Groves, Tony Bellew, Glenn McCrory, I worked with two of them on the radio on Saturday nights, Glenn McCrory and Tony Bellew. They offered great advice to Chris Eubank Jr. And I saw George Groves with his arm in a sling yesterday morning. George's advice is go to America, get away from your father, go and rebuild quietly now at middleweight. And Glenn McCrory and Tony Bellew both think that he needs to step away from his father as well, step away from Ronnie Davis, create something new, and come back, because he's got all the physicality, he's got all the athleticism, but, you know, he barely threw a jab, and he was kind of out-jabbed for the first 5 rounds of the fight. So, you know, he's been boxing since he was a teenager. It's not like he's inexperienced, but he's inexperienced on the big occasion, and he didn't have a game plan.
Do you buy all those words that were said on the radio the other night, Gareth? Do you buy the fact that his father is this obstacle between him and reaching the next level?
I think it's a very complex question, that, Owen. I think that, you know, I mean, I was sitting talking with George Groves about this yesterday. We were saying that, and not in a mean way at all, but maybe only a psychologist could unravel the relationship between Eubank Jr. and Senior. They have extraordinary charisma, you know. And they genuinely do. When you're around them, they make everything they say is brilliant copy. And, you know, we're all journalists. We know when people make great copy, they get elevated, they get augmented in the media, you know, because they are preening, posing peacocks, the pair of them. And as a result, when things don't go right, you know how cruel the world we live in is. And it's even more cruel today because of social media. I mean, Nassim Hamid on the ITV's broadcast told him to retire now. I mean, you know, and Naz went off. I mean, Naz in a suit was something to behold anyway, to start with. But I've never seen him in a suit. You know, he literally did say that this guy isn't going to improve. He should retire now. He doesn't want to see him get hurt. But you know, the point is, this is what boxing. Big boxing has revolved around for 160 years. Hype and promotion. People forget very quickly that someone has had a bad night. It's built up again. Excuses are found. A new team is made, and people come back. We've seen it a million times. George Groves was here against Carl Froch in 2014. He lost the first fight in Manchester, having dropped Froch in the first round. They came back. After the controversial stoppage in the 9th round, Groves pushed the issue with the IBF, got the rematch. We had 80,000 people at Wembley Stadium with Groves saying, look, I told you so. People want it. And what did he do? He got knocked out by a cannonball right hand in the 8th round and had to live with the ignominy for the next year and a half or 2 years or 2.5 years till he won a world title, and he lost another world title in between. It's a tough sport, boxing, at this level, and at the moment Eubank Jr. is technically not good enough to live at world level. It
doesn't seem like a couple of things. The style that Eubank Jr. brought to that second half of the fight in particular, with the wild uppercuts and like swinging for the fences, actually made the second half of the fight as exciting as a one-sided fight is going to be, where a more technically proficient boxer just jabs the opposition to death. Like, so I think he deserves a bit of credit for that. He has been absolutely pilloried, and even in commentary, like, this fight's over, this is terrible, on the TV, he was getting absolutely hammered. And I was looking at it going, there seems to be something else at play here, that, like, if somebody else was fighting with that cut and that blood and this style, he would actually be getting a lot more credit for it. And I wonder if the credit comes in the days and weeks to come when everybody goes, actually, I really enjoyed that fight.
Yeah, exactly. You're not wrong, Jer. I mean, there is I can, you know, again, I was working Sunday Telegraph and Monday Telegraph as well as Talk Sport, you know, building up and pre and post fight. And there was no question that the fight was extraordinarily thrilling and exciting. There's no question about that, because of the kind of physicality, because of the human specimen, the physicality that Eubank brings to anything, you know, and he gave his all in there. There's no question about that. There's no question about his strength, his tenacity, his desire and his will. He's just technically proficient. The problem he had, yes, he did make it's an exciting fight. And, you know, people that know boxing, of course, you know, great on TV. He was throwing himself in there. He was forcing Groves into the ropes. They were having a tear up inside, but he wasn't really landing with very much, even though it was exciting. And I do agree with you. He does deserve credit for that. But I think when you make all the pronouncements that you're knocking someone out cold, that you are going to end someone's career, that you're sending them into retirement, it's just that the swing is so huge when that doesn't happen. And, you know, technically, I think Groves won 8 of the 12 rounds. And the last round, he fought with one arm, remember? So, you know, he dislocated his shoulder. So you can discount one. So you say he won 8 of 11. What Eubank did that really shows he needs to change is that he had to lunge in to get close because he couldn't get round Eubank's jab. And by about the 4th round, his face was showing a man who was getting caught, and he didn't know how to react to it. There wasn't the right advice in the corner. Look, yes, he does deserve some credit for being a very brave man, but the trouble is, if he's a very brave man at this level for 4 or 5 fights, and he gets beaten up like this for 4 or 5, he took a lot of shots from Groves last night, on Saturday night. But the point is, he just needs to improve. I like him. I love being around them. I think they've, as I said, I think they've got terrific charisma. But you know, he'll come back from this. He put out on social media yesterday, he'll be back soon enough. And the funny thing is, if Groves' shoulder isn't right, you never know what's going to happen in this situation. He could come through as the loser and fight in the final if they have to do that.
Yeah, he could well do. That'll be some blow for George Groves. And on George Groves, how much credit can the McGuigans take for his performance on Saturday night? And where is the McGuigans stock at now post Carl Frampton?
Well, that's a big question. Okay, have we got 25 minutes? Yeah, I mean, it's a great... Look, I mean, there was a lovely moment. There's a great thing at the beginning of the WBSS, when the World Boxing Super Series, when both fighters come out in these events. It's a brilliant arena. If anyone hasn't seen it, it is worth buying the broadcast, because generally, of course, we have a square platform around a ring, but it's circular with a circular light show. And both fighters come out and stand on a podium outside the ring, and smoke comes up. It really is like being gladiatorial Rome. And I'm getting to the point here, Owen. And the point is that when Shane and George came out, they posed in the pose that the Eubanks normally do on the stage before the fight. It was absolutely brilliant. They took up that, you know, and they kind of strutted like this, like Eubank Senior used to do. And Shane, I think, had a great time on Saturday night, because he had clearly meticulously prepared with George. They had really studied Eubank's movement coming in, and they caught him so quickly, so many times with the jab, where that's why he was hurling himself in the end to get in. That's why there were head clashes. Shane had a great game plan. He's a terrific mentor for so many fighters. Barry's in the background. I saw Barry Sunday morning in the Lowry as well, with his wife and Barry's daughter, and all the whole family were there. They will have had an input as well. They don't do things as one, the McGuigans. They do it as a 6, I think, generally. So, yeah, he takes great credit for that, because Groves stayed mentally and physically on his game plan, which takes a lot of effort over 36 minutes. And as I say, especially with the last 2 minutes with your left shoulder hanging out, because Groves said he tried to throw it at one point and realised that he couldn't even lift the arm. And with the Frampton situation, oh God, I mean, I find it gutting. I did bring it up with Barry on Sunday morning, had a quick chat with him about it. I mean, nothing on record, but just to say that I'm so sorry, because Carl Frampton was like his 4th son at one time, and those two were so close. I don't know what to say about it. I'm just so desperately disappointed that these relationships go south in boxing and end up in court, you know?
I guess from Shane McGuigan's point of view, the main thing is that he isn't just now wedded in the popular consciousness and in the wider boxing public with a single fighter. He's done it twice. And you do it once, everybody goes, okay, you know, great, but maybe that guy was preternaturally gifted and all you were doing was not getting in his way. With this, it's like, hang on a second, we've masterminded this. And, you know, even if he's picked the right guy, that's a talent in itself.
Yeah, but also, look, I mean, I think Shane's, I mean, it's incredible with Shane because, I think, isn't he a year younger than Carl anyway, from memory? I think he's a year younger. I mean, it was an extraordinary relationship anyway. Shane's a very young trainer. He's going to be around for 20, 30 years doing this. He's so talented. He's so bright. He's so articulate to speak to. He's a very clever kid. I mean, I just call him a kid. I'm the same age as Barry, but and he is. He's a clever kid, and David Hay likes working with him. People speak highly of Shane. He's always measured. He's very, very intelligent to talk to, and he will only get better and better. Carl was his first major student, and I see Carl as so interred with the McGuigans. I still find it hard that they've split. But listen, Carl's a terrific fighter. I can't wait for Nonito Donaire. That's going to be, oh my God, that's going to be off the charts. Talk about claret. There'll be claret that night, I tell you.
One last thing, the actual prize money I didn't realise was as big as you said it was for the two weight divisions. Part of me feels like this might actually be the future for boxing, where we do put enough money on the table for fighters to risk losing, and ultimately, there's been a big debate about the future of the UFC and how bound up they are with the single individual talent, given how many of their superstars have fallen by the wayside or been popped for drugs recently. It was a really good piece that we did last week with Bryn Jonathan Butler about this, and you can see that boxing is responding a little bit to UFC by trying to put its best fighters together, and they're actually paying the fighters enough money to make it worth their while.
Look, I mean, there's three. I think there's three weight divisions, and I mean, we've seen an incredible cruiserweight division in this tournament for a start. We got a final with Murat Gassiev and Alexander Usyk. What are you passing little notes for there, Owen? No, and Alexander Usyk in the final of this tournament, this cruiserweight tournament. We've seen people didn't know who the cruiserweights were before this event, so it's fantastic now. So is the super middleweight tournament. Listen, I covered the World Boxing Super Sixes, Classic Super Sixes in 2010 to 2012 or 2009, 2011. It really made Mikkel Kessler, Carl Froch and Andre Ward at the time. Look where they went on to go and do. There's three divisions in the world where we know who the champion is and everybody knows. In featherweight, super featherweight, everyone knows it's Vasyl Lomachenko. In middleweight, everyone knows it's Gennady Golovkin. Billy Joe Saunders may argue with me over that, but I think everybody would say it's Gennady Golovkin. And at light welterweight, it's Terence Crawford. Errol Spence is trying to prove that at welterweight right now. Every other division, there is a debate about who is the Ring Magazine number one, who is the right fighter in the division to be called the number one. These tournaments, yes, there might be one stray because of politics and television deals, but by the end of the tournament, you know who the number one in the world is. And 40 years ago, most people that covered sport in our hemispheres or followed sport in our hemispheres knew who the world champion was in every weight division. And if we did have these tournaments, Jer, there is, like you say, the right amount of money on the table. You know who you're fighting over a year, so you've got 4-month camps apart. And we are going to create stars. And boxers at the top of every weight division should be a star. We've got people who are 7, 8, 9 ranked in the world who call themselves a world champion at the moment. It's because they own a portion of the world title belt. That's what's wrong with boxing in many ways. In answer to the UFC question, they are realizing why boxing has kind of evolved and developed like it has over 150 years as a professional sport, because the UFC stars are burning out very quickly. I mean, I could talk to you for an hour and a half now if you want to go into the next, 90 minutes talking about Conor McGregor. It's so kind of convoluted and complex. But yeah, the tournament, look, whenever you can get a unification, it's great in boxing. Any tournament getting together, say, if 5 of the 8 of them are in the top 7 or 8 or 9 in the world in one of these tournaments, you are onto a winner. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, speaking of unification, and that's why I was passing it out to Gerard, was just to get one last question in on Katie Taylor, because obviously her next fight has been announced in the last 24 hours or so. Victoria Bustos in New York in April. We don't know a lot about Bustos. I'm not sure if you do, Gareth, but she's one of a coterie of fighters, I understand, in South America who have kept very much to themselves up until this point. So this unification bout is not only huge for Katie Taylor, it's huge for the face of women's boxing.
Yeah, listen. Whenever Katie Taylor is in my vicinity, I'm just swooning. No, I am. I've loved her since I first met her back in, God, when was it? 2007-8 with Peter, and went down to Bray to see them. Spent the day with them in Bray, and she's a wonderful woman. She entrances me. She is $1 Million Baby. She basically is $1 Million Baby. And look, the women's boxing has a big following in Central and South America. They actually get big numbers to events. Like Nicola Adams, the flyweight, is at a great advantage now that she's come into the pro game, because some of the female flyweights get crowds of 20,000 going to watch them in Mexico. And I think for Katie, her style is so exciting. There's an enigmatic quality about her as well. The modesty, I have to do this when she's speaking just to hear what she's saying. Have you had her in the studio?
Yeah.
Well, you know what she has an extraordinarily attractive charisma. She's a beautiful human being. I mean, and yet when she steps in the ring, she's like some kind of a raging bull. And those qualities are extraordinary. I think this is an amazing time for women's boxing. I've said it on your show before. If she turned pro in 2012 after winning Olympic gold in London, she could have fought Minnie Mouse at Croke Park and sold it out 3 times. Do you know what I mean? And she should be headlining arenas in Ireland and building a following to take them to America. That's my view of what should be happening.
Gareth, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning.
Absolute pleasure, gents.
You can follow Gareth on Twitter at Gareth A Davies DT, and of course you can read his work in the Telegraph as well. It always feels like there's an agenda against Eubank Jr., but I guess it's explained by the fact that he predicts that he's going to end careers, and so that causes people to go, no, hang on a second.
No, you're
hang on a second.
The only career you're going to be ending is your own, mate. But according to Prince Nassim, that'll be the case.
Yeah, that was weird.
Very strange. It was strange even just seeing him, as Gareth said, in a suit in the punditry chair. I'm not sure, does he do a lot with ITV? I can't say I've watched a lot of boxing on ITV. I'd say the last time I watched boxing on ITV was Carl Frampton a few years ago in that free-to-air fight.
Oh, yeah.
But they haven't had a lot of boxing since, so I'm not sure, has he popped up in other places? But he certainly has made a name for himself as a pundit by that outrageous remark, which it is outrageous to suggest that he should retire after...
He's 28, he's not going to retire.
He's not going to retire. It's a nice enough payday, and he was completely kind of outskilled by a superior opponent, but I don't think the opponent was that superior to him, if you know what I mean, as in the ceiling that Chris Eubank Jr. can get to isn't that far away from where George Groves is at.
There's a developing Mick McCarthy story this morning. He has denied abusing his own fans while celebrating after a goal was scored. And if you're at any point on Sky Sports News today, you're going to see they blot out his mouth so that we don't get to see what it is that he might have sworn. And they might also blot out his hand, do they?
His hands, yeah.
Yeah. So
it was like,
is it that or is it a that?
I don't know, but it was quite funny. He was very angry, and it looked like he was in the dugout here, but the fans were over in the stand right over there.
Yeah.
So he was like giving it loads to them, but sure, I don't know what he could have been giving thumbs up, and he could have been saying I love you, but they had it blurred out on his hands and mouth, so I can't speculate what he was saying.
He made a late substitution, and his own fans seem to have gone crazy. He received criticism for the decision to substitute Dominic Yorfa late on, but the goal came after the switch was made. So obviously he takes off somebody that the fans like, and they're like, "Wow, what are you doing? What are you doing?" And then he scores, and they're like,
well, we're speculating that's what he did. Allegedly, yeah. I mean, as I say,
to him. That's the one time you're allowed to go, "Excuse me, I've got like 40 years managing here, and you chumps have been supporting a shitty football team for a long time."
Well, it's kind of like a Gogger TV Stag moment, isn't it? As in this kind of explosion of energy.
Fuck you, Deputy Stag.
Precisely. An explosion of energy that isn't necessary, but is very entertaining for us all the same. So good on you, Mick McCarthy, basically.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think Big Mick's going to get away with that one. Right, we're nearly done here on Monday's OTB AM, but here's a snippet from this weekend's Saturday panel. Brilliant stuff from Stephen Kenny, Ian Morris of Bowls and Alan Murphy of Galway United. They were all in studio with Nathan as the 2018 SSE Electricity League season kicked off. Here's Stephen Kenny talking about the TV coverage of domestic Irish football.
as a manager and dealing with some of the clubs I've been managing, when the game is televised, it's bittersweet for them because they feel that they will lose revenue on the gate, because, and particularly when it was 7 o'clock kickoffs on RTE, and things like that, that they would definitely, the gates would be considerably down, and I think that's it. But I think there's a bigger picture. I think definitely it's good to have exposure. I remember managing in the league even over 10 years ago, and the matches were rare and rare, live games, and I think it's good overall to have live games. It's not something we should complain about, but there should be, we should want to be on the TV every week. I think there should be a game every week, but the clubs, in conjunction with the FAI, we're the only country in, probably one of the few countries in Europe that doesn't have a TV deal. That I remember managing Dunfermline, and every time the match was on TV, the club got 6 figures or whatever. You don't know away. So it was, so certainly in and around that, So I think it was, that was back in 2007. It was over 10 years ago. So so that's one of the dilemmas facing all of the clubs. I think TV revenue is just hugely important for the growth of all clubs.
Yeah, so obviously always really interesting to hear Stephen Kenny talk about any of that kind of stuff, and got to get to the stage somehow where the league has regular TV coverage and the clubs are delighted to be on TV because they want to showcase their wares and make everybody feel like they're missing out by not being there. Yeah, precisely. I mean, having great games to advertise with is obviously a first step to that, but how do you make your product to a standard that you just mentioned there? How do you make it a product that makes people jealous that they're not in the ground, basically? Yeah. And ultimately that's going to take a lot of money. Is the finance that's been injected into Dundalk over the past couple of months with that new ownership, is that going to give them a level where they can sustain players of the likes of Darrell Horgan, of the likes of Shawnee Maguire, to stay in the league, that people will get jealous because they're not on the ground watching these great players? Exactly. So just to go back to the Ipswich situation, Ipswich scored in the 89th minute, right? Luke Chambers scores, it's a header, thanks very much, 1-0. It looks like it's going to be the winner for Ipswich at Norwich. Big game at Norwich, 89 minutes gone, scores the winner. This is what Mick does. That's him, yeah. Fuck off. Just in case you couldn't lip read there. To who though? Not to his own fans. And then unfortunately Tim Close scores an equaliser a minute later.
No.
It's like,
no. That's gutting.
It is gutting, but look, fair play to Big Mick, he cares about it.
Of course he does. I mean,
but he's not going to take any of your shit, Ipswich fans. He ain't
No.
gonna take, I mean, it might not have been aimed at them in particular, it could have been aimed at nobody.
Of course, like he could...
General...
As in, like...
Dark, infinite scream.
Yeah, he could have just been talking to that voice inside his head who was telling him about...
Don't make that substitution, don't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to get hammered by the fans here, don't do it.
And he was like, screw you, devil on my shoulder, Mick McCarthy. Inner me was right. And yeah, it was just kind of a moment of self-fulfillment, maybe.
You were watching a fair bit of the Winter Olympics. There was a doping scandal where one of the curlers, a husband and wife team, done for meldonium.
Meldonium, yeah. The meldonium must be very, very attractive in Russia, because they just look at meldonium and they're like, yes, that is the sort of thing that I want to engage with, despite the fact that you get popped for it so easily.
A friend of mine had a friend who went to the Ukraine and was like, here, get me some of that meldonium stuff. Brought it back, took it, said it was amazing.
As in just endurance, is he an athlete?
Cyclist, yeah.
Right, okay.
Go all day was what he said.
Cool, I'm definitely gonna try that out. But just on the Winter Games, the best interview of the games occurred last night on TV. It was Bubba Newby, who was taking part in the half-pipe ski, not a half-pipe snowboarder, he's a half-pipe skier. And he was chatting to Darren Frehel on RT, and it was the closest thing you'll get to a Michael Scott moment in the Winter Olympics. Frehel asked him, it's pretty dangerous up there in the half-pipe, isn't it? And Newby was like, yeah, it's dangerously fun. And I'm like, oh, what a slap down from the skier right here. And I was like, Bubba Newby, I want you to succeed so badly. He's going tomorrow morning in the half-pipe, and we should all get behind him.
What time's that at?
I think like 4 a.m. I'm not sure though.
So we'll report on tomorrow morning's show. We'll also have Shane Williams, the Welsh legend, in studio helping us to preview the Ireland-Wales game on Saturday. Of course, tonight on the radio, Monday Night Rugby will be the start of our build-up, a week-long build-up really to this game, because it's such a huge game in the Six Nations for us now. And of course the football show coming your way from 7 o'clock on News Talk. Stay tuned to all our radio stations today for all the breaking sports news, and get to offtheball.com for all of your sporting needs. Whenever you're ready, we are. We'll see you tomorrow. Good luck.